Hello and welcome to ServiceDesk Plus. Thank you so much for signing up for this second session of the masterclass. In the last session, we looked at how you would manage a major incident if it were to happen. So this time, as we all are getting back, slowly getting back into some sense of normalcy, and we are also getting accustomed to the idea of working remotely, we thought it would be a good idea to do a session on setting up a service catalog that will work for a remote workforce, that will work for personnel who are completely remote, including your hiring, be it a request for any service. How would a service catalog that is completely remote will look like? So even before we get right into the session, here are a few housekeeping. As you would see, as you would have noticed, all the attendee lines are muted, and we will have a question answer at the end. But as you can see, there's a chat available where you can continue to send in your question and answers. I will have an eye on the chat icon also. I will, as and when possible, respond there. But otherwise, my co-trainer here, Charles Ignatius, who is no stranger to our ServiceDesk Plus users, will be available there taking in your questions. And at the end of the session, also, he will take your question and answers, questions that you have during the session. So please make good use of the chat button in case you're not able to hear or is not streaming. Please let us know. And for some reason you're not able to attend the entire masterclass and you have to leave in between, no worries. We will send you a recording of the session. And if you do have any feedback, there are some email addresses displayed on your screen. You can make note of them and send us your feedback. So how does today's session look? Now, this is a rough agenda that we will have. We will try and define what a service catalog is at all. And we will try and list the components that make up a great catalog. And we'll see how Zilker managed its process using service catalog. And we will demonstrate, that is where the meat of the session is, demonstrate how the service catalog capabilities of ServiceDesk Plus. Now, even before we go into a service catalog, taking off from where we left off in the last session we discussed incident management. So I would like to find out how, if there is any difference between an incident and a service request. Most often we talk of requests synonymously, we interchange incident and service, but can you really do that? What differentiates a service request from an incident request? I assume that some of you are already aware of it, but if you aren't, I would let us see. We will discuss that. So before going there, I would like to do a poll. Which of the following will qualify as a service? Okay, thank you so much. Most of you answered the question right. It is which is when you request for a software or license. Now, the difference, just summing up the difference between an incident request and a service request. An incident is something that causes a disruption to your work. That is, you cannot proceed any further. Something has happened, you're not able to access the internet. Something essential for you to perform your task is not working, and the IT has to get into action to resolve that issue. So that is an incident. A service request is something that you would want to have, you would like to have, and there is a formalized process for you to acquire that service. For example, you need a software license, you need Adobe Illustrator, or you need any particular service for which there is a process of procuring it. So, and as we speak of procuring and as we speak of, naturally, a service request is something that is going to involve approvals, multiple levels of approvals. Whereas an incident request, then it may not require the number of approvals a service request might require. So this is one crucial difference between a service request and an incident request. So naturally, the workflow that an incident request follows will be very different from the workflow a service request will follow. So a service catalog. So where does the service catalog come in this situation, in this frame? A service catalog essentially helps you to list all the services and offerings that you are making available for your employees in the organization. It is a catalog, essentially, where you can go ahead and pick the services that you require. And it is so elegantly designed so that it makes it so that it is easy for your users to pick and choose what they require. So then moving on to the third aspect here, the service catalog will also, so this is part of how elegantly you design your catalog. So there's category, description. We also talk about the availability, SLAs, and costs. Now, very importantly, a lot of you may have this question that I don't see a service catalog on my instance. Yes, because it is available by default if you have opted for an enterprise edition, and it is available as an add-on for your standard and professional edition. So now, as we speak about service request management, you will see that this is probably the process that a service request should follow, right? A service catalog right in the center, your end user looking at the various services available for them and logging their requests, and the service desk takes off from there. It communicates all the services that are available and provides the services in a timely manner, and also ensures the user is satisfied. But is this how it really works? Now, we just listed out in no particular order the various things that can go wrong or things that happen in your service catalog when it is actually at work. There are I mean, one thing is, of course, the channels with which people log in and tell you, some of them just walk in and say, what, I need this request. I mean, I need this software. Can you make it available? Some of them are just going to make a phone call and tell you. So, and not only that, and for people who just come and walk in and do these things, they may not have visibility of what is happening to your service requests. And then, how about services that are so easily available? It's basically information, So there is no knowledge base available. Things like this can make the service catalog look very messy, and the service request management itself can become a painful process. So we are going to Zilker here. Zilker is a software company, and they have multiple branches. They're geographically distributed. Now we are going to see, let us say that they're going to be hiring a few people across all these locations, but everything's going to be done on remote, and within a very short span of time, they're going to be doing all these things. So let's say they're going to hire people across all these branches. Let's have 4 branches. So what happens is that every time a new hire comes in, there are different departments that need to be working together. Am I right? So when a person walks in, there's the HR who's going to be giving out their, doing their orientation, your papers, and all the paperwork is taken care. And then there is the hiring team, the actual team with whom the new hire is going to be. And then, of course, the payroll, and there are legal teams, So there are several teams that are going to be, several departments that are going to be working in tandem for the new hire to be hired completely into the organization. So in this, on the slide, if you see, I would like to draw your attention to the blocks under the green blocks. Those are the tasks. Each team, each department has all these tasks, and each of these tasks might be done by a different person. Now we are looking at this entire block for one request. One person comes in, and this is the number of tasks, and this is the number of departments that are going to be involved in this hiring of one person. Now imagine we're going to be hiring, even if it were 10 people across 4 locations, it's going to be a huge number of requests coming in. So what happens when there are a huge number of requests coming in? These are the various roadblocks that you can encounter. Like, every department, if all these guys, HR and your legal and payroll, if they're all going to be working in silos and not communicating with each other, and there's no way in which you can keep track of which task has been completed when and how, we are just heading into a lot of trouble. So, and then there is no process to gather all the data also. And if there are several technicians working together, again, there is no clarity on who does what. Then, of course, naturally, we were preparing for all this, problems. So you could see that all the tasks may fall through cracks, and there is no automation for processes like, approvals. As we discussed, approvals are very essential when it comes to service requests. So if there is no automation, and, the process might get very, very slow. And then again, SLAs, which are very important. If there are no SLAs to ensure timely delivery, that's another roadblock. So we back here in Zoho, what we do, this is an efficient and an effective framework that you can follow if you want to make sure your service request management is perfect. Just in between, if you're in hear my audio or if the video is going down, please use the chat tab to tell us if you're with me, just in case, just to make sure I don't fall through a crack. So this will be the framework that we will follow. There's a process one, step one will be your hiring manager, who is going to be raising the new hire request. As we saw in your third or the fourth slide, where we saw the interesting schema, where on the left you saw all your end users, on the right was the service desk, in between was the service catalog. So your service desk, on the other side, gathers all the important details they require. For example, if a person comes in and the person is he's not, he doesn't provide the exact software he needs. Half the time the new hire may not even know what she or he needs. So what would happen is that the service desk will shoot off a mail to him or her asking for the exact software they want. So this again will create a loop. This was going to create more. So what you could do is that if the service desk had a mechanism to collect all the necessary data right at the time of hiring, it would be great. So then we move it on to the next stage would be routing. That is, you are going to route it to the right technician, route it to the correct approvers. And after the approvers have done their job, it gets automatically assigned, and then the tasks are automatically triggered. And once the service request is well into action, as in when the process is happening, you have an SLA mechanism in place to ensure the timely resolution of the service request. And finally, when all of this has happened, we have an automatic mechanism to close the request and also notify the end users, and also a way how well we performed. So I hope I'm clear so far, and if I'm not, do let me know. And it wouldn't hurt if you could also tell me in between if all is going fine too. So yeah, we will now move on to the demo. So in the demo, we will be looking at the same framework. We will use this framework one after the other. We will be going in, and for the next half hour, we will stay with ServiceDesk Plus. Can you see the instance right now? Yes, no. Let me know. To hear from you all, even as I keep continuing to speak, it's nice to see people respond. So in Zilker, we are looking at Zilker. So John is our hiring manager. So typically is the end user. Am I right? So as an end user, John logs into what we now call as the service catalog. So this is the service catalog, as you can see, this one here, right here. The cursor points to the service catalog. So this is John's login. He's the hiring manager. He goes to the service catalog. And here, please make note of these terminologies. We will go into detail about what these terminologies are. Here are service categories, and under service categories, there are few blocks of information. And these are nothing but templates, services. So under services, under service categories, you have services, and each service you have a template. All these that you see here right now are templates specific to user management. So you have multiple user onboarding, remote user onboarding, super mode. Now all these are things that you can decide for yourself. So let's see, John goes and looks at this one form to hire. So John has, let's say he has about 4 or 5 people to hire from his side. So he's going to look at, so it says multiple user onboarding. So yeah, probably he could hire multiple people. Now, this form, you will, I would like to draw your attention to certain fields and items on this thing. So here, first thing you see is an onboarding SLA. That's a drop down. So if I drop this down, so here you have urgent requests, onboarding requests. So let's see what happens if I clicked urgent request. So when I clicked urgent request, you saw that this immediately changed to will be delivered within 4 hours. I go back to onboarding. So it says will be delivered within 15 days. So right here, your user is made aware of how soon his request will be fulfilled. Now, isn't that one big thing out of the way? The user is not going to be left suspended, unaware of when her or his request is going to be fulfilled. So right here on the template, depending on the SLA the user select, you tell her when the SLA, when the request will be delivered. We will, in the next part, we will be, in a couple of moments, we will be seeing how you can make sure these items appear on the template. Then on this side, you see total cost. Again, we will see how this field changes as we change things on in this template. Now here is the subject. Yeah, it's a new joinee request. Now there's somebody called an editor. Who is an editor? Now, very helpful here are the info icons who tell you who an editor is. An editor is somebody who has the access to these templates, to this particular template, to change or update any field. All right. So you can go ahead and, so John believes, let's say Eliza can change any of the fields here. And here is an approver. So I've configured my own name there for ease of understanding. So here is one set of approvers which this user, the end user, can configure right in the template. Of course, the other approvers will be configured by the admin. We will look at those approvers in a moment. Now moving on to the heart of this template, the real work. So there is something called as a section category of the new hire. Okay, let me say I'm going to hire a permanent employee. Now, please make note, there is nothing here. There's just one section here. I'm going to add a permanent employee. The minute I choose a permanent employee, there's an alert thrown out. I hope you're able to read what is displayed there, but I'll read it for you. You are about to process request for a full-time employee. Please fill all fields without fail. So immediately. So the minute I choose that, you would see that, you know, section 1 has displayed. So I'm going to give the person's name as Joe, and I'm going to give, I'm going to just fill out all these departments. So here, when I'm just going to select regional sales manager, the minute I chose regional sales manager, almost like magic, you saw section 2 display with a lot of items there. And make no mistake, here these 2 items are already pre-configured based on the role. Okay, and even while this was pre-configured, the minute I chose regional sales manager, your total cost changed to 2 resources added. And so then there are other things that you can select. So as and when I select whatever I want, the cost keeps changing right there. Okay, so I'm going to add this stuff here. So the minute I add it, there's going to be a link. So the form has loaded again, and I can now go ahead and add as many number of staff I need into this thing. We will see how you could configure a template that looks as pretty as this. Okay, so you merely go ahead and add. Now we will quickly go ahead and see how you can configure this template. You're welcome to ask me questions in between, and also ask if you would like me to describe or discuss any aspect that you have you would like some clarity on. Time permitting, I will go back and discuss a couple of things. So now we will go to my admin configuration. So I log in as an administrator, and I'm going into a place where I can configure this template. So this is the enterprise edition. As you can see, service catalog is right here, available here. We go ahead into service catalog. So this is where you can service catalog, which I showed it to you in John's login. And very quickly, this is where you can add your categories. And here under each of these categories, as you hover over them, you can add services. And each service is a template. So this was the template that John was using, as you can see. So this is the template here. We've already configured it. You can also go ahead and configure it from scratch, and it is as simple as it looks here. Now, as you can see, there are some of the fields that are already pre-populated. If you want to add new fields, on the left panel, you have all the fields available. These are the sections. There are for example, request classification, categorization. These are sections. Each of these sections can be pulled from this side. If you want them to be double columned, you can do that. If you want them to be single columned, you can do that. You can add single line text. You can add, these are the various field types that are available here. Now, as you would notice that there are some green colored fields. You might want to know what these are. These are fields that are common between your service fields and your incident additional fields. These are merely common fields. Now, when you add a field, let's look at this. When you add a field, okay, I'm just going to pull out a field here, and we could also yes, just a second. I'm just getting the exact field that would be very useful for us. Okay, so here you would see that this is a field that you can add into it, and you can also customize these fields. Each field you can give it a different font and background color and all that. And as you can see, there are various fields available under each section, and we also looked at common additional fields between a service request and an incident request. Now, here comes the real matter. So the resource info section, as when you saw the resource info section, you had only the section 1 to be filled out. And then there are section 2, section 1A, which got displayed the minute you selected permanent employee. So after, under personal details, when you selected regional sales manager, you had section 2 displayed. Now, how did we manage to do all these things? So I'm going to introduce to you. Before we go ahead and talk about how to change all these things, very briefly, I will dwell upon how to add these resource info only. You need to click add resource, and this page opens. So we already give you a lot of questions that are there for you. You can use one of them, or you can add your new question. You can use plain text, checkbox, radio. So I'm just going to use checkbox here. So here you can use, you can add a question here. Just 2 seconds on what this is. Holds identifiable information means this answer or this information could potentially identify the person. And with regulations such as the GDPR, when an employee leaves your organization and exercises her right to be forgotten, you have to anonymize all her information. You will need to or redact all information that could personally identify her. So what ServiceDesk Plus does, or make it easy for you, is right at the time of collecting all this information, if you could mark it out as personally identifiable information, you will be able to perform all the privacy related activities, data, very easily. So as you can see, so this is about the PII, which is the personally identifiable information. You can also enable cost here. Now, this was the information that was right next to the SLA. In your template of the template which John was seeing. Now, here you can even enable images. So these are the images that were displayed right here. Can you see these images? These are the images that get displayed. So, so much for the how to add your resources. Now, going on to how do you make them dynamically appear? How do you make them almost magically appear? So, section 1 will be displayed by default. Now, depending on what I select here, depending on the change in the field, I want section 1A to be displayed. And again, under section 1A, depending on the role, I want section 2 to be displayed. So how do I manipulate that? So I'm going to introduce another terminology to you, which is called as the field and form rules. You're under field and form rules. Okay, under field and form rules, on form load, that was the first time you're seeing, the first time John saw it. I would like to draw your attention to resource questions here under the column rule, execute script. Now, scripts are available to you, to all our users. You just merely need to send us a requirement and we will send you the scripts. So it is by using the script that we have made it possible for that question to be displayed. But what is more interesting is the one we were discussing, which is on field change. So the minute somebody selects permanent employee, rule name is permanent employee, when the field is changed, which field gets changed? Category of the new hire is changed. The condition is permanent. We are going to execute a script to show this resource, which is 1A. So we will do this for another thing. Similarly, we did this for regional sales manager. As you could see that the regional sales manager, the minute you selected regional sales manager, the role, the condition is the regional sales manager. The field was changed, and the resource section 2 was displayed. And even while the section 2 was displayed, we had by default the work workstation to Apple. We had set the field to Mac keyboard. We had set the field which is choose additional software to be Mac keyboard, additional hardware to be Dell keyboard. So all these things we had pre-configured. So if you could do all these things right in the beginning, your all the information that your service desk requires to fulfill a service request is available on the even at the time of logging in. So now that we have created a way to ensure that you acquire all the information, all the details required, we can move on to the work, which is merely telling people, or which is merely defining what happens after you have logged in. So as we already discussed, naturally a service request requires multiple levels of approval. So this is the first approver, which you already saw in the template, the first template that I showed you. John was logging the request. Under editor, you saw this approver already there. So what happens is that when John selects an approver, John as the end user selects the approver, the first stage is skipped. The first stage is already taken care. So you can go ahead and create up to approval stages, and these stages you can also add organizational roles. So who are the organizational roles? Organizational roles are all these business owners, your CEO, your department heads. So you might wonder, where can I where do I configure? You configure them under the ESM directly. I'll just go there for a moment and we can return to this screen. You go to your ESM portal, and right here under organizational roles, you will be able to configure all your organizational people. Okay, here we are. We are going to go back to our template. So we are at we were at user management. Yes, and as we were discussing, you can configure up to 5 approvals, 5-stage approvals. And you might be wondering, even as I set up these approvers, should I configure everyone to approve, or if one person approves, is that enough? So we give you that option here, right here, the approval configurations. You can either select for all approvers action to come in before the service request can move on, or you can just apply the first approval action, okay, and go ahead. So you might be wondering, what happens if one of my approvers is not available? So we got you covered there. Here I'm going to configure a backup approver. To configure the backup approver, you will go to the home page. So in the home page, we have backup approver. So one of the sections is backup approver. So here you can go ahead and configure your backup approver. So go click select whichever approver is not going to be available during which period, and you can select the person who's going to take over in her or his absence, and also provide the timing here. So this way you can configure your backup approvers. So now that you have configured approvers, what happens next? So once everything is approved, you will move on to your technician assignment. How do you assign your technicians? Which is this is again fairly simple. We follow our business rules to do technician assignment. Business rules appear under incident management right here. So you can use business rules. Those of you who are not aware of business rules, this is a very versatile feature using which you can quickly assign a request to a group, to a specific technician, and also configure notifications as well. So here we have said, if you can see the subject here, if it contains remote user onboarding, immediately this is placed in the user management group. Now, this is one way of making sure that the service request is assigned. Another way, and also you would also notice before we leave the screen, I just wanted to make mention of notifications, which also get sent the minute a template, a request is placed in a group. One other way to make sure that the request is assigned to the right group or the right set of people is something that you can do right on the template. So in the template, after you have configured the workflow, we have only configured up to the approval. We will go back to the rest of it in a minute. Right below the technician, right here, you will see that you can associate support groups to the template, meaning this template is available only to specific technician groups. Support groups are grouping of technicians based on their expertise or based on their departments. Now, similarly, you have also what's called as user groups. User groups are categorization of users, your end users. Now, for example, John would be in your HR team, and you will make sure that this template is available only to those users. So soon after a request from the HR team comes in, it gets placed in a certain group, certain user, a certain support group. So now that we've now that approvals are out of the way, technician assignment is also out of the way, what we are now going to look at is SLA. Now this person, we met SLAs right in the beginning. We gave the user the option to select the SLA. How did you do that? This is where you configure one or more SLAs for a template. So how do you do that? You can click the associate button, which means you've already created an SLA. Already you've created SLA under your SLA tab, or you also create a new SLA here. So this is where you go ahead and create a new SLA. We are going to create an SLA here. So soon after the SLA comes in, the SLA has to be responded and it has to be fulfilled within a certain time. Now, as if you've attended our incident management, or if you already handle incident management, you will notice the marked difference between the service request SLA and the incident request SLA. An incident request SLA is one that can be configured based on an incoming criteria, whereas an SLA, a service request SLA, does not have such a provision. However, you can do the same, the same functionality of SLA actions are available within the service request SLAs as well. So when there is an escalation happening, like they are not, fulfilled, or the request is approaching a certain, violation, what happens is that you can go ahead and enable the escalation to be sent to specific people. And not just that, you can also do 4 actions. 4 SLA actions are available for you. You can go and physically place the SLA, place the service request in a group. You can assign a technician. You can reset the priority. You can also select the level. So these are the things available for you under SLA. So you can either create all the SLAs here and associate them in the template as I showed you, or you can create new SLAs right there and associate it to the template. So yeah, so this is the SLA here. Now moving on, now that we've got the SLAs done, we've got your approvals done, you've got your technicians assigned, what happens is that, so for a minute, I'm just going to go back to our slide to just show you where we are in the framework. So as you can see, we have now moved on to stage 3, and we are on stage 4, where we are going to automatically trigger tasks. And then, but we also looked at the SLAs also. So yes, so these are the various tasks that have to be triggered, or that will be triggered soon after a new hire request is logged. So here you have the provision to automatically trigger them, or you can also manually trigger them. Now, all these are tasks. If you see, each of these tasks, you can either associate these tasks or you can add a new task. So yeah, you can use a task template and add. So as you can see, you can also, so all these are the tasks that have been pre-configured for this template. You can also define the dependencies for each of these tasks. Now, these defining dependencies is fairly simple. What you do, you click whichever task and define which task has to be completed before it. So the minute you do this, it gets reorganized. And since it's fairly simple, anybody will be able to do this. Now, even while we talk about these things, I'm going to just show you one example or one important information here. Now, there's something called as mark and assign tasks. So when you have marked a task, which is a dependent task, technician will not be made aware of the task until the task it is dependent on is completed. So you can use this feature to mark these technicians. So, but the tasks get assigned only when all the dependent tasks are completed, or that is when even these tasks are made visible to your technician. So moving on, you also will notice that there are something called as template actions. Now, these are available only if you've built integrations with other Manage Engine products such as AD Manager Plus and Desktop Central. Now, how do these actions look? These actions are available for you right from inside your service request. When you open this request, these actions are available under custom actions. So now that we have configured your end-to-end service request with your approvals and tasks, we have to also look at a smooth closure of your request. So when your request is closed, when your request is closed, what are the certain actions that need to happen? So we will look at closing rules. So what happens is that every time you close a request, you can make sure certain fields are mandated, or you can also say the associated tasks will have to be completed. And also you can also make sure that these processes, you can also close all the associated tasks. Soon after the associated tasks are completed, you can move the request to a resolved state. So under request closing rules, you have all these fields, all these configurations available for you to close the request in a smooth manner. Now, very importantly, what we need to also look at is to get a grip of how well you have performed. How well has the service desk performed? So what we usually do is send out a survey. You can do an end user satisfaction survey. So we give you that option to create that survey, and that you can do under user survey, and you can configure a survey to be sent out after every service request is closed. So we have already configured a survey here. This is the onboard survey, where you can add surveys here, right here, and you can define when these surveys this survey has to be sent out for every service request closed, or for every service request closed for a requester or for a technician. These are the various ways in which you can make sure your request has been fulfilled, and also have an understanding of how well you performed in terms of your service request delivery and how well have you managed. But to know from an administrator's perspective how well the service request management is happening across your organization, we provide you reports. So these are reports that help you look at how your service requests have been performing. So out of the box, you have specific service request reports that are specific to service requests. So if you click on the left panel, you will get your request by category, by priority, technician, and all these are already available to you. So, and one final thing before I close the service request management is the communication part. So as you all probably know, we have a robust communication process in place, which is through the notification rules. Here you have what's called as notification rules. So yeah, so under notification, you can select who to be notified and when to be notified. So we have categorized by requester and by technician. Each of these can be sent out as an email or even as an SMS. And you have a template where you can customize using your variables also to send out specific information to specific people. Now that sort of brings us to the end of the demo. Going back to our session, yes, so we looked at each of these stages. And so as I already discussed, how do you evaluate your incident management? You'll have to see how many requests you've been able to close within the SLA. How well has your service desk team performed? How have they been efficient? And how were your incidents resolved? So a short recap of all that we discussed is that we discussed what a service catalog is, and we saw how you can create categories and templates. And then you also saw how detailed your template can be. We used field and form rules to manipulate what data is displayed. And also we set up approvals. We used business rules to assign technicians. We also configured SLAs. Now, OLA is basically the organizational level agreement, which helps you, fulfill your SLA. So, OLA, in simple terms, I like to call it as, a mini SLA. Several mini SLAs together make up your SLA. So, all these OLAs are your SLA. If your SLA is for 10 hours, it gets broken down by organizations, and an OLA is configured to one department, and a specific time is allotted for them. So, and we looked at also our closing rules to automate a smooth closure. And we also discussed an important aspect, which is the survey, so that you of how well your customers are, how good your service request management was. Just a few pointers that Charles mentioned also. There are some of your questions that we have not answered here, I see. And some questions related to cloud too. All of these questions we would be happy to answer if you could write to us at hello@servicedeskplus.com. We will be responding to you there. Over and above that, if you would like to have more information about ServiceDesk Plus and the features that are available, please look at our admin guide, release notes, product videos, and then a community too. It's a very vibrant community where all our users are there and sharing information and things. And also we also have a support portal, and you're welcome to write to us your feedback and stay in touch. And yes, very importantly, stay safe at this difficult time, and let us hope that we all get back to our work places at the earliest possible and as safe as possible. If you would like any product training or product consultation, please, you can go ahead and book your slot by clicking the link that is available on your that is there right now. And yes, Winley, we will get back to you on your question right there. I remember you asked about cloud. We will get back to you on that. And thank you once again. Have a good day and stay safe. Bye-bye.